It's gonna get real ugly.
It's Thursday night. That means you're listening to PHP Ugly, episode 153. I'm John Congdon. Yep.
54.
54. What did I say? 153? That's because I wasn't here at the beginning last week. I missed what number we were on.
It's a
You weren't here the whole time.
You can't process anything anymore.
Gotcha. Anyway,
Good.
where did I leave off? Oh, yeah. Me. I'm John. With me is Eric.
Hello.
I'm not even giving last names because I don't want people stalkers. You know how that goes. And Tom right out. Oops, screwed that up. You get all the stalkers.
Awesome.
I am not giving out names. It is not safe. It is a serious security. Here's Thomas Rideout.
He lives at 123 Main Street. Was I not supposed to tell people that?
Nah, it's fine.
Oh, another
Okay.
week. Another week has passed. We are at the end of May, just like that. So much. The year is almost half over.
And I was listening to our previous episode before this episode, and there was something wrong with that third guy that showed up last week.
I don't know. He was a lot of fun.
I was sharing with Thomas. Thomas messaged me. I think it was Monday night. He's like, "Hey, I got things going on. I'm having trouble getting this edited. Can you edit it?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay, I'll edit it." And it had to be hands down the absolute worst episode ever to edit. I mean, not only did you come in late, once I got everything lined up, it wasn't that bad. Matter of fact, hats off to Thomas, who thought to have us do a clap check at the end of the show. But once I got everything lined up,
handy.
it was okay. But your entire stream, John, echoed both Thomas's and I stream. So
Oh, really?
yeah, so every time Thomas...
My local recording?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You cleaned it up well then, because I didn't hear that in there.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun. I was cursing at Thomas the whole time. I'm like, I hate that guy.
That had
Yeah.
been because I was using my no, I had my headset on, did I? I don't even remember. It was so long ago.
Yeah, it was like 7 days ago, man. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. That was forever ago. Well, I'm sorry for making it a hard edit.
Nah, fine. So what's everybody been up to this week? Anything fun?
God, I wish.
The grind of development, the grind, the day to day. I tell you, I love these people who come on and do a podcast like once a month, and they talk about all the good, cheerful things they worked on and all the cool new things. But no, you grind this out every week, and you try to talk about work week after week. It stops being so much fun.
I'm doing a big refactor, which I like refactoring. Taking 3 lines down to 1 line, and then all of your 1 line entries, taking them down to 3 lines total, and just compressing everything out and getting it nice and speedy and readable. There was a hastily thrown together set of pages on my site that needed to be separated from the rest of the logic of the site, and it's taken a couple days, but refactoring is fun.
Well,
That's one of the talks I'm going to submit to PHP World was on refactoring using PHP Storm.
Yeah?
Yeah, I love PHP Storm's refactoring tools.
one of the talks you're going to submit. What else were you going to submit?
I don't know. I was working on that on the plane ride home last week.
So I thought the
So I
difference
forget.
between PHP Tech and PHP World was PHP World was supposedly more focused on like solutions, like frameworks or Drupal or WordPress or
That was the original goal, was trying to bring all of these other people, the WordPress people that maybe didn't feel part of the PHP community, bring them into the overall PHP community. I don't think that panned out as well in the marketing as they had hoped, because the word camps and the Drupal camps are still huge in their respective areas, but they didn't get a lot of bleed over into the PHP World Conference. At least I don't think they did. So it's still the goal is to make it all encompassing, but honestly, all PHP conferences are like that. PHP Tech wants those people too. So I don't think they're as segregated as they were back when it first started, 5-6 years ago, where I think they possibly had a WordPress track. I don't think they do that anymore.
So we have some listeners who are looking for our input on a couple things. Do you guys feel like tackling some input?
Make it a call-in show?
No, not exactly. I already have the topic. Actually, if there's somebody in Discord listening to the show right now, I would appreciate some feedback, because I set up a new scene, and I don't know if I have it set up correctly. That active speaker scene. In fact, let me cut over to that for a second, and we can test it. So the active speaker scene, I realized when I went back to watch the video, it was actually tracking all of our voices. Because
how you would expect it to respond?
Right, but I had everybody in here separately as well. So on all the other scenes in OBS, for those who are wondering, we use OBS. So typically on all the other scenes in OBS, even when I do like your single shot, John, if you look at the scene, I have streams for Thomas and I, because that's the only way our audio gets on track. So
Right.
even though it's showing you, I can talk in the background.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Well, when I set that up for active speaker, of course, we had double streams everywhere. And what I don't know is, like you just did, John, where you were talking
Right.
while I was talking. I don't know if that gets captured or not. So it did switch over.
Oh, that would be interesting. So you're thinking that if we talk at the same time, that it's only picking up the quote unquote active speaker, so one stream at a time.
What I'm curious about, yeah.
Interesting.
And I just tried to talk to you just to test it.
You were supposed to be, yeah. That makes sense.
So if we have anybody in Discord who wants to give us a thumbs up of whether or not that's looking, I guess I could open up YouTube and check myself, but I'm not really going to worry about it right now.
Too many clicks.
Yeah, I'm not going to worry so much about it.
And we're professionals. We're going to listen to our show while we do the show.
Okay, do we want... So both topics are kind of heavy. Do we want to make a lot of enemies or make few enemies? Either way, we're going to make some enemies.
We're probably going to cover both of them, so I would say it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you know how I'm inclined. It's
all right.
As many enemies as possible works for me.
So you both have homework today.
Remember, 123 Main Street.
You have to remind me at some point to throw up our Patreon page, this Patreon page here. Remind me that, and then remind me that I have a nice topic I want to talk about as well. So don't let me forget that. Okay, let's talk.
Had a place to put those ideas.
Let's talk about the first thing that came to me. Actually, the second thing, because I think the first thing is actually a bigger conversation. So we got a tweet today. I think everybody should have gotten it because it did go to PHP Ugly, and somebody said specifically, referring to episode 153, last week's episode, what sort of alternatives are we looking at when we start to complain or gripe about Laravel? what alternatives do we have in mind, or what are we thinking? And I thought that was a good topic because it actually leads into some of the things I'm working on as well. So we do a lot of griping about Laravel, and
But I think I think the bigger issue is overall that Laravel isn't the answer to every problem. So it depends on what problem you're trying to solve.
okay, so let's start with that then. What, based on your current knowledge of Laravel and the years of experience that you have under your belt, and quite honestly, of the three of us, John actually has the least amount of hands-on experience with Laravel, but he's been involved with a lot of the decision making around Laravel. What would you use Laravel for today, John? And what would you? Let's start with that. What would you use Laravel for today?
Getting something prototyped and up and running quickly.
Okay, that's fair. So, what would you use for the next phase to write an application? If you had to start a new application, let's say it has a front end to it, let's say it has some APIs to it, your general web app, what would you use? Would you use a framework, or would you go native? What would you do?
It really depends on what I'm writing, I think, because with our recent interview with Rob Allen and talking about serverless architecture, like I said last week, I would be leaning away from a framework, going serverless, putting the APIs up on something like AWS Lambda, and trying to minimize the code footprint as much as possible so that I could reduce my cost. Right now we write things in frameworks, including Laravel, that have all this bootstrap time for every single request that comes in. When you look at something like Lambda, you're paying per compute cycle, and that container that it runs in has to boot up. So the more code that's in there, like the full framework, the longer that takes to boot up.
But I mean, aren't you talking fractions of seconds?
It doesn't matter when you think about every single page request where you're paying per compute cycle, that adds up.
Okay.
And when it comes to the boot up the boot up cost, depends on how active your site is, because once it's up and running, it stays running. I forget for how long. You're not gonna have that cost associated there, or that slowdown. But still, that first request that comes in that needs to start up a new container, the more code that's there, the longer that's going to take.
Okay. So your kind of initial thought or opinion is you would seriously be looking at a serverless architecture right now and writing native.
With the things that I'm looking at right now, which are very small applications, I'm thinking that way. I really don't know because I haven't done it yet. It's kind of just a new interest for me to look into.
That's fair. It perks your interest.
But I also want to say I don't really just want to chase the new shiny.
Mm-hmm.
It's really listening to the pros of going that way in our interview with Rob that makes me say, maybe I really should really take a good look at this.
Okay, that's fair. Thomas, same question posed to you. Would you use Laravel today? If you were to use Laravel today, what would you use it for? And would you have another solution for a different approach?
My shop is a Laravel shop, so I don't have the pleasure of being able to just switch over to something new. But if I were working on a new project, I would go with Symfony.
Interesting.
Okay. Symfony 5 is coming out soon.
If you had, I'm sorry, don't mean to cut you off of that, but
that's all right.
If it was your call across the board, I mean, let's say you went and started your own shop tomorrow. Are you just saying from that moment on, you would just have a hard stop on Laravel? You don't really see a place for it at all? Or do you agree with John with, hey, for prototyping, for spinning something up quickly?
I wouldn't go with Laravel if I was doing prototyping. I would go with the micro framework from Laravel, Lumen. Now, because I'm working on a single project and a single sort of monolith code base, I can't just switch over to some other thing I want to switch over to. But I also don't feel the need to. It's my job to maintain the system in the state that it's in, and Laravel's problems are in the maintenance part for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not calling you out. I'm not trying to get you to commit to.
No, I'm trying to figure out how to word it so that it makes sense. But because I'm just supporting this monolith, I don't have a problem with doing the maintenance work we're required for version upgrading.
Right, but his question was, if you left where you're at now and you started your own business, or you were starting a new project that was completely separate.
Yeah, so if I was going to be doing development on projects that I didn't want to constantly maintain, that I wanted to just update when I needed to and push them out there and let them be their own things, I would want to go with something more stable on the versioning side, like Symfony, or I might even look at Cake. But I'm also very interested in where I ended up with React and GraphQL. I wrote an entire application in Laravel, but I really only had 2 lines of code in the Laravel code base, one for a route and one for a controller that returned a view. And that was all of the Laravel code. Everything else was the GraphQL library and React. So I would be really compelled to build an application in React or a similar, JavaScript framework.
Interesting.
And I know it's blasphemy on a PHP podcast to say I would just go with JavaScript, but it's...
Well, I mean, there's a limit to what you could do with JavaScript as far as client-side JavaScript. Once you have actual business logic, yeah, the front end could be all JavaScript and React, but the business logic is going to go somewhere.
Yeah, but because of how GraphQL is structured, you can get a lot of business logic in your GraphQL queries in your backend.
Right, but there's certain things you can't put into your JavaScript that is proprietary. Otherwise, you're giving away the secret sauce and you don't have a business anymore.
Well, but with GraphQL, there's 2 types of queries. There's the back-end queries and the front-end queries. So the back-end stuff can have invisible logic in it that the front end just calls the query engine to see.
Yeah, we're saying similar things, but the logic isn't just in the query. There's got to be code back there that's doing something.
Right. That's in the GraphQL server. You put some logic stuff in there.
Boy.
GraphQL queries have 2 parts. There's the query definition, and then there's the query being executed by the client. So the query definition can have logic in it. And when the client calls that defined query, the logic gets executed on it.
But in your everyday application, not all of your business logic is in your MySQL instance or Postgres or whatever other database you're using. There's other code that makes it all work.
Right, but you can do a similar thing to stored procedures where you do have business logic in the query.
Okay. Now you're making more sense.
So
All right, Eric, same question to you.
Cool. So, so yeah, I mean, I've already kind of exposed my hand last week. I am, and along the same line as you, John, I am going full board serverless for the immediate future. I've got some projects I'm working on that I'm going to force myself to really get a good understanding of serverless architecture, of where serverless benefits us as a company, and try to develop within that architecture. And as I said last week, I am open to, if that journey takes me away from PHP to something that's more conducive to serverless, so be it. Now, I do have a plan of attack. As it turns out, I just finished writing some API endpoints that I had done in Laravel. So the first question is, would I still use Laravel? That's a tough one for me. I mean, ultimately, I'm so comfortable with it. I've built my business around it, so I know my developers are comfortable with it. I would probably have some resistance if I were to spin up a new application today. I would probably put up some resistance against bringing it up in Laravel. I'm very interested in continuing down my PHP path using something like Symfony. I have not used Symfony in the past, but Symfony checks a lot of boxes for me as far as if I ever do need enterprise support, if I need a stable framework with good development cycles behind it. Symfony's checking a lot of boxes, and that's coming from an ex-Cake PHP guy, who I'm still a huge fan of Cake PHP, but I find myself looking at Cake sort of the same way I'm looking at Laravel nowadays, where if you're trying to get started, it's a great framework to get started in. If you need to build a full application, if you understand the commitment you're making to babysitting that code base, then it definitely has the power to run big applications. We met with a client, well, not even a client. We met with somebody today who came in and asked us advice on getting their Laravel app up to date. And they were so far behind. They were back still on Laravel 4 that it's going to be a challenge for them. I mean, but again, they're a major version behind, so that would have been a challenge for any framework. More so with Laravel, I actually did some homework yesterday and went back and started looking at all the releases. And like we've complained about, I really kind of trying to keep an eye for the releases that broke Simber, the ones that had a backwards breaking change, but not a major release version. And unfortunately, and not to anybody's surprise, that was a consistent thing. So I mean, I can't honestly say that I would walk away. I'm walking away from Laravel. I am definitely not. I mean, we have a huge Laravel code base out there currently with a lot of clients. So I'm married to Laravel for a while, for better or for worse. The idea of getting nearly as proficient with another framework appeals to me. And within PHP, that would probably be Symfony. But again, all that's put on pause because my real focus right now is serverless. I don't know what I'm doing with serverless. So back to what I was saying, I just completed a PHP application that had a bunch of endpoints to it. They're just API endpoints that we were developing for a mobile app. I've actually already done this. Take that Laravel application, which we now have deployed on AWS. It's running on EC2 instances. They're their own servers. They do auto scaling, all that. I'm going to take that exact same code base, make a few modifications which are required to run with Bref, which is the PHP library to allow you to run PHP applications on a serverless architecture, and deploy that on serverless, on Lambda. Now, I've already done that, and it actually works. I'm actually very excited about it. The one thing, so I have, within the API endpoint, I'm capturing response times, both within the application as a whole, and the response time of the individual services is pinging. So there's a couple factors involved there. I haven't gotten it fully functional because I don't want to cheat the serverless implementation. I'm trying to get the serverless implementation to run using a DynaDB instance. And if there happens to be anybody out there familiar with DynaDB and Laravel, hit me up on Twitter at Shokum. I'd love to talk to you because I actually have it working. In Tinker, I can call my model for DynaDB. I can get my records. Everything works perfectly as expected. I can even create records. I can even sync a MySQL database to DynaDB. It's all working very well. But for some reason, when I try to call DynaDB through the API, I'm getting this hash error, which I can't I'm having trouble tracking down why there's a difference. But again, I don't want to cheat the serverless implementation. I want the serverless implementation to talk to DynaDB and then get that kind of response time. My next step is the big decision I need to make. Do I want to try to recreate the endpoint using regular PHP, or do I want to extend on the arguments of not using a framework and not use a language that's not really designed for serverless and look at something like Node.js, or the one that's been really appealing to me now, and I know the last time I mentioned this, I was focusing on Node.js, but I kind of pivoted a little bit on it. I'm really looking at Go. And the reason being is Go is a compiled language, so a lot of your errors are caught before you even deploy. And then Go is right. And then Go is very fast and designed to run in a serverless architecture. So I'm bouncing back and forth between Node and Go. I don't know where I'm going to land, but I don't know if I can't use a framework in serverless. I don't know if I'm going to use PHP in serverless because of just in my head the argument just extends. It's you don't use something it's not designed for, and it's overhead. Well, PHP isn't designed to run in serverless. PHP is overhead in serverless. So if I'm going to listen to that argument, I need to listen to it all the way through. So that's kind of, I think, that's where my interests are today. Serverless, and I'm going to work through this experiment with the Laravel app running on EC2 instances, Laravel app running on a serverless architecture, which includes the data store, and then try to spin up another app that's, I don't know if it'll be PHP. It probably won't be PHP. It'll probably be either Go or Node, and really try to get a sense of what the cost and speed differences are.
Hang on a second. I've got to go register GoUgly.com real quick.
Go. Our ugly serverless real quick, yeah. Yeah, so, and I tell you, I mean, it's been a while for me since I've been this excited about development. I love development. I love it through and through. But it does tend to start to grind on you after a while, especially when you're working on just, the same project for, months at a time.
So who were we supposed to piss off with that question? Was that the small group or the big group?
That was the big group. That was the Laravel. That was the Laravel world. So that was the big group. The next one,
That's not gonna piss enough people off.
No. We've already pissed off all those people. They stopped listening to us a long time ago. Okay, real fast before we move on, do you guys want to? Do you have any more questions for each other on that topic?
Negative.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so let's.
I'm gonna have to think about it. You know, I want to get into Symfony. I want to look at it, and I can't give you really the best answer until I'm more familiar with it.
I agree. I have been a fan of Symfony from afar for a very long time, and I'm feeling like it's time for me to get a little bit more comfortable with it. And I think the thing that worries me the most is that I'm going to not like it. And that's honestly a concern of mine is that I'm going to start to use it, and I'm going to realize, yeah, I don't care for this. This doesn't work for me.
So I'm more concerned about how I'm going to feel about doctrine, because as much as I hate on Laravel, Eloquent, man, is just so nice. I love it.
I'm pretty sure you can use Eloquent in Symfony.
Yeah, I think you can too. I mean, Eloquent is just another composer package, but you mentioned Doctrine, and I'm in the process of it's being adopted on the main project I work on.
Oh,
so some developers have introduced it as, you know, an option to get rid of the very legacy data layer that's there now. And this week was all the developers doing a practice exercise of implementing something with Doctrine to just to get your hands into it and use it a little bit, make sure everyone understood entities and relationships. And I gotta say, it was very interesting.
Oh. So the little exposure I have to Doctrine, first thing, it seems like you're being pulled into a cult whenever I try to say the word.
Indoctrinated?
Yeah. But the annotations freak me out. I mean, I've heard people criticize Laravel and facades as being too much magic. Annotations to me just seems like complete black magic to me.
I agree with you 100%. There were times where I was doing this exercise and I'm just like, all right, when I'm in two different entities and they're talking about each other, am I supposed to be using the property name or the column name? Because of the annotations, you can have, in this case, all of the tables have table_ID as the ID field, but most people nowadays are using just ID, right? So in your entity, you could have your property is just ID, and the annotation is saying, okay, but the column name is user_ID. Now I'm in an annotation in another entity. What am I referring to? And that caught me a little bit.
And you worked through it?
Yeah, I worked through it. I mean,
does it make sense?
I worked through the exercise and got it all working. But I'm agreeing with you that the fact that it's so much is being done through annotations is just freaky and magic.
Yeah. But my question was, after you worked through it, were you able to make sense of it in your head at that point, or is it still okay? Okay.
Yeah, I've definitely made sense of it, and I'm excited to give it a go and use it more. It's going to be a long, long road because this is a huge application, and the current models are so hard coded to the data layer that it's not just, oh, let me change out my data layer and I'm good to go. It's going to be a lot of refactoring. So it's going to be a very slow process, but it's going to be interesting.
Interesting. And then, and this is just the database layer, right? I mean, that's all you guys are looking at.
Yeah, for this. It's changing. They're using a database layer. They're using DB data objects, which was written for PHP 4 originally. And
well, that's why you're gotten so comfortable with it so fast.
yeah, and I've bastardized it all to hell. Actually, brought it into the code base and bastardized it enough to make it work with PHP 7. So it needs to go at some point.
Wow, that's cool. Okay, so we do want to thank our patrons. We want to thank our patrons for supporting us. I know we haven't been doing this on a regular basis, and your money will go to something here coming up. Like I said, I mentioned getting getting an intro outro for the show and just standardizing on that. Then instead of John, Thomas, and I trying to mumble through it. So I will probably.
Hey, I wasn't mumbling. I
No,
was
you
trying to
did.
be funny.
You're actually the best intro that we have. So
That's sad.
This
That's
week,
very
you were a little
sad.
mumbly last week.
so I do want to thank our Patreons. All right. Before we move on to the next topic, I do have a shout out to one of our listeners who happened to post who happened to do a blog post recently, and I wanted to share it on the show. Why is our scene not changing? Oh, there we go. There we go. Oh, I got to fix your screen here. There we go. Okay. Oh, that's the wrong. Sorry, that's the wrong tab. Wait 1 second here. Let's come over here. There we go. All right. Syntax Seed, who, if you are a listener in Discord, she is in there, or she used to be in there pretty frequently. I don't know
She
how much
still is.
Is she?
Yeah.
She has a great blog post out there. It's about a few days old now. Called "The State of PHP," where she kind of runs down her opinion of PHP. It's great if you're especially just starting off with PHP, or if you're considering getting more involved with PHP, because she does address some of the legacy arguments with PHP and why it's not so much a legacy, why it's not so much an argument anymore. Yeah, if you're interested in it, if you're thinking about giving PHP a go, I'm not sure why you're listening to this podcast, but check out Syntax Seed's Syntax Seed blog post. We'll throw it in the show notes, and make sure you give it some love. I don't know if you can. Yeah, it looks like you can do like little hearts on here. I don't know. All these blogging platforms now have all their different ways of showing your appreciation for a blog post. But yeah, she's a great. I mean, she contributes in Discord a ton. If you're ever interested, she's very helpful. Always full of good information. So check it out. Okay, so speaking of Discord, that's where our second topic comes from. So it's funny, somebody happened to mention how our Discord seems to run hot and cold. Like it'll go completely dormant for a couple days. Then somebody will come in and ask a question, and it'll just be this flurry of messages for like the next 3 or 4 hours. Then it goes completely dormant again. But the conversation in Discord had come up, and it's kind of something we've touched on in the past, and it just seemed like another good time to bring up the conversation again. And it's kind of around the ethics of our profession, but whether or not we felt like there should be some sort of licensing or some sort of certification program within our profession across the board. So like you have, like anybody can say they're a handyman, but you have to be a licensed carpenter to get certain contracts, or you have to be a licensed plumber to that says you adhere to certain standards. Anybody can say they're a plumber, but But if you can hire a licensed plumber or unlicensed plumber, you can hire a licensed builder or unlicensed builder, and should we have that sort of practice within our profession where it's not necessarily saying you have to become a licensed developer, but being a licensed developer carries a different level to it, where maybe you can get government contracts where any run by night guy who says he's a developer can't.
Isn't that what the PHP certification was supposed to be all about?
I don't think was it. I don't think I never thought
Not
that.
necessarily licensing, but I mean it
And
was meant to be a tool to get you in the door.
Well, yeah, but that's different. I mean, that's all certifications. That's actually how I got my start. I got a Microsoft certification, and I was able to.
Everyone got a Microsoft certification. All you had to do was breathe, and they gave you one.
Well, yes,
Hey,
it's
hey.
true.
Mine cost
But-
me $18,000.
But that's the point, right? Is should there be an industry standard certification, not language specific necessarily, but an industry standard certification that says, hey, this person understands basic web security. This person understands, validations, and if you hire this person, they have a knowledge base of a certain level. Like they're not a beginner. They're not an amateur. They have experience. They have certain training under their belt. I mean, I think that's the point. It wasn't necessarily a PHP certification or a Symfony certification. It's just an industry standard of, hey, if you want to release something on AWS, you need to be a licensed developer. Like, if you're not a licensed developer, you can put something up on a shared hosting platform if you want. I mean, nobody's stopping you from developing. But if you want to release something on AWS, if you want to leverage a system like DigitalOcean, you have to be a licensed developer, or you have to work for a licensed development shop, because we're getting to, or if you want to work in the health industry, right? If you want to develop for the health industry or develop for the government, you have to prove that you adhere to certain practices, that you understand certain, concerns and security issues. And you do that by having this industry license.
At the risk of betraying my political beliefs, I have to say I don't think more oversight is the answer. I think that this is a self-regulating issue where your resume is your certification.
But the problem is, and I agree with you, Thomas, to an extent. If I need to hire a developer today, I know how to hire a good developer. I know how to hire a developer who won't create crap code. However, if I was a less scrupulous design firm, and I have Walmart coming to me saying, hey, we're going to give you $250,000 to design a new website for me. Can you get it done in 3 weeks or 3 months? And I'm going to say, yeah, I'll just bring on 10 developers, and I don't really care how good they are. So they're going to be working credit cards and transact. I don't care. You're going to pay me $250,000. I'm going to find 10 of the cheapest developers I can get, and we'll build something for you. And I think that's what you're trying to prevent.
Well, I'll say, I think Walmart's a bad example. I think Equifax is the perfect example, where their security is so bad across the board that it compromised all Americans' data.
And again, self-regulation failed probably because somebody was too lazy in the hiring process, or someone was too lazy in the management process.
I think it's because somebody
didn't
lied.
hire a licensed builder. Well, somebody didn't hire a licensed builder. So if I have somebody build a room on my house and I'm lazy and I don't confirm that they're actually a licensed carpenter, and they build something and the roof collapses and kills my kid, and I go to court and I say, well, I hired a carpenter and I thought he was licensed. And they say, well, there's no evidence showing that he's licensed. You didn't do your homework. I'm sorry for your loss, but you have no lawsuit. that's what we would be talking about with Equifax. We would go to Equifax and say, show us your licensed developers. Well, we just assumed they were licensed. We didn't really confirm it. Well, guess what? Now this is on you. You know, what you thought you owed 10 times as much. You have less of a defense. You have less of justification. And now you're in even deeper trouble because you didn't do your basic homework.
But it is on them. Even the current system.
But do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. I just don't. I don't think it's tenable. I don't think there's any way you could achieve it.
How do you feel the self-regulating approach is working? Because in my eyes, it's not. Self-regulating is not working. We have hundreds of terrible developers out there. Either knowingly they're terrible or unknowingly they're terrible, but they're terrible developers. And they're getting huge contracts. They're working for companies that are managing your health information. They're working for companies that are handling your credit card information, that are handling your bank statements, that are handling your retirement funds. These developers are out there with no regulation, with no oversight. And
so I can say that there is kind of a thing like that. If you look at PCI compliance, that is a system of certification for credit card handling. If you want to process your own credit cards, you have to adhere to certain levels of PCI compliance. When you're dealing with medical data, you have to adhere to HIPAA regulations. So it's not necessarily that the person is getting certified, but the requirement is out there that certain security rules be followed for certain significant ways of storing data. Now, my issue is that there are a lot of developers out there that program poorly or ignore security rules, but I don't think certification of a person for that is going to change anything.
So why
I don't think so either. I mean, just because you're certified doesn't mean you don't make mistakes.
Okay, so why do you feel like we need the certification for plumbers, for builders, for doctors? I mean, why don't they self-regulate?
Because it's life and death.
For a plumber?
Yeah, electricians, plumbers.
For electricians, it is life and death.
You can
Very
say
much
it's life
so.
and death with developers as well, Thomas. I mean, show me a life or death machine that's not running code, and then I'll agree with you.
But in those situations, there are government regulations that are required to be adhered to. In the case of automated cars, where literally is life and death, they're working on legislation to require certain levels of testing for the automation systems and for reviewing the code bases. For systems like MRIs, there are requirements for the code to undergo review and to have safety procedures in place. There's a classic story about one of the first X-ray machines that had code running on it was dumping out 10 times the dose of X-rays than it was supposed to, and that led to a law regulating how code in medical devices is handled. And I think that's the only way that you could do it, is you could say, when working in this area of expertise, you have to adhere to certain regulatory rules. Because as soon as there's a new coding language, then the whole system of licensing doesn't work, No,
I already said that this is abstracted away from language. So new language introductions would not apply. It would be the practices around that, practices around development.
But there's types of things like languages for manipulating data that are not necessarily coding; they are queries, and you would have to cover those as well, even though they're not coding. And I mean, in a certain way, you could look at plumbing and just say that it's the same as being an electrician, but with water instead of electrons. So, I mean, you wouldn't want those areas to overlap. You wouldn't want to be regulating somebody who shouldn't be regulated because they're typing in an entry on a search bar. But I don't think there's a
I
practical.
agree. We need certification. Let's be the certification body and come up with it.
Are you being sarcastic? Are you really agreeing with me? Are you agreeing?
It's just being mean.
I know. I feel like he's being mean to me.
No, I agree. I think having some sort of knowing who you're hiring is a good thing.
But I mean, would you go as far to say, in order to take advantage of certain services or to get certain contracts, you would have to have a certification? Do you? Would
I
you
mean, that's
agree
only gonna work within government, and yes, because as you can see, they hire people. People get contracts that shouldn't. Look at our voting systems that seem to be all broken.
Mm-hmm.
Or when the health insurance websites went live, they were fraught with errors because people just want government contracts because it seems like easy money, but it shouldn't be. It should be you're doing a job, and so let's make people accountable that way.
Interesting. Yeah, cool. Well, I don't know where I'm at. I mean, I try. I know I wouldn't be where I am today if there was some sort of regulations in place that required me to get some level of certification. I say I wouldn't be, but I don't know. Because I did actually go get certified to get me started in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, when I start to think about it logically, and when I start to think about where this sort of certification or requirement is for other industries, it does start to make a lot of sense. And again, we're not saying you can't develop unless you are certified. We're just saying you can't say you're a certified Ford dealership or Ford repair shop unless you're certified Ford repair shop. It's you can't do certain you can't get certain building contracts unless you have certain certification. And it just seems to make a lot of sense.
I mean, you go back to the Microsoft one, there was so many levels and so many specialties within that. So it's not like you were Microsoft certified. Yeah, you got the very basic one pretty easily, and then you could build on that. You are web certified or security certified. You understand. You understand the OWASP top 10 or things like that.
And those certifications are still out there. And like you said, there are PHP specific certifications, there are database specific certifications, and if we were ever in a position where we were looking for certified developers, I mean, we have that option. So, I mean, those are still out there. It's just deciding on saying, okay, here's a minimal baseline of somebody understanding cybersecurity that has to be adhered to, or something like that. I don't know. And like you said, you just start to overregulate, and then everybody wants to get in. Cisco wants to get in and say, okay, we'll come up with the certification, and then Oracle says, no, we'll come up with the certification, and then somebody in the government's auto pool say, no, we'll do it because automobiles and we're government, and it'll just end up broken anyways. But I'm torn on the topic. I mean, we talk about ethics all the time within our industry, and this is one of those ways that you would enforce ethics. And
well, what about basic cybersecurity education in school?
What about? Yeah, I think it should be taught. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I mean that's
Yeah.
Russia. The reason that Russia is the hacking nation is because they have fundamental computer education as part of their basic school curriculum.
Well, in these schools that require a foreign language, I think programming should be recognized as a foreign language. And I think programming should be I think everybody should understand the basics of programming. You don't have to.
Maybe your code is a foreign language.
You don't have to be. You don't have to become a programmer, but understanding the basic concepts of programming, of like you said, cybersecurity, that needs to become part of the curriculum. I mean, computers aren't becoming less important. Computers aren't going away. They're not going to say, well, we're not worried about that because in 10 years nobody's going to need to know any of this information anymore. We should be building a curriculum around cyber life that's required for people to take in school, including touching on programming, coding, security, the social aspect of it. Yeah, I feel like that's a given.
I don't know. I think the idea is nice, but I don't see it as doable. But at the same time, if you were to unionize programmers, you might have something there. Being a member of a union could serve as the same thing, where you're represented by your union, and if you do something that is bad or inappropriate, the union drops you and you lose that union membership.
Interesting approach.
Do you think anyone listening is still awake?
I'm surprised you are. I just flipped over here and just saw you nod off.
He's still there. It's surprising.
Crap, the camera's still on me. Oh man.
I think doing it as a union system would solve two problems, which is the union representation and pay in programming, and as well as that sort of certification.
All right, time to move on.
Validity.
Time to move on.
Why? What do you have?
Don't want to talk.
Did you just tell us to move on? You don't have a topic to move on to?
It was a joke because he's talking about having to pay all the developers the same thing.
Not the same thing. I believe in meritocratic pay.
Meritocratic.
That'll get me yelled at.
That was a big word.
All right. Well, I think we probably beat that topic into the ground. I would be curious though, if anybody is listening to this, if you want to let us know your opinion, hit us up on Twitter. If you at PHP Ugly on Twitter, all of us should get notifications, but all of us also have handles Showcom, John Congdon, Real Rideout, all on Twitter, or join us in our Discord. And like I said, we had a lively discussion about it for a good day and a half, I think, a couple days ago. So feel free to pop into our Discord and bring the topic up again, or let us know what you think. All right. Well, I mean, I don't know, man. I steered this ship into the iceberg. I think we're done. Anybody have anything else you want to talk about?
Did you have a margarita with your daughter?
I'm sorry, what was that, John?
Did you go and have a margarita with your daughter?
A margarita? No.
Oh.
Are you looking at Facebook?
I am.
I took her to a baseball game, and I have a little gin spirits bar I go to. So they have gins and bourbons and stuff. It's right outside the ballpark, and it's like hidden away, like nobody knows it's there except for the people who crowd the bar. And I took her there. My daughter's 21; she's old enough now, and introduced her to a few bourbons and gins, and we had a good time before the ball game. I bought a 20-pack of baseball tickets this year, and I am thoroughly enjoying going to the ball game. I didn't think I would, and I am thoroughly enjoying it. So.
Yeah, God knows how you hate baseball.
Baseball! All right. Yes, I had a few drinks with the kid the other night, which is so bizarre. Oh,
That
okay.
must be
So
fucking weird.
we're gonna wrap this up, but you want to hear something super super weird?
Yes.
Yes.
Take your time answering.
Yes.
Okay, let's finish up the show and I'll tell you afterwards. No, this is bizarre. So where should I start this story? My daughter. So I have twin daughters, and one of them went up to Sacramento a week ago, or not a week ago, a couple days ago. Ended up meeting up with my high school chemistry teacher
I did
when
see.
I went to high school. It was
See, 150?
so. She is not that old. No, she was a very young chemistry teacher when I was in high school. So the whole story is um, this particular teacher probably became my wife and I's first adult friends after high school. So my wife had some things going on, and she ended up moving out of her dad's house the last uh, few months of her senior year. Moved in with this chemistry teacher who just happened to be my chemistry teacher at the time. And of course, nobody at school knew it. It was a big secret and this and that. Well, my wife and I start dating. We start getting friendly. And turns out this chemistry teacher was encouraging my wife, saying, "Hey, I know Eric. He's a good kid. You should think about dating him." So we start dating. Of course, I find out my wife is actually living with my chemistry teacher at the time. And we graduate high school. We start to go to college. My wife ends up moving in with me at my parents' house before we got married. And the chemistry teacher remained our good friend, so much so that she was supposed to be in our wedding. That's how close she had gotten. Now, it turns out that chemistry teacher moves to San Diego about a month or two before we got married. So as a result, she wasn't able to be in our wedding. Well, fast forward 2 years later, after my wife and I are married, that chemistry teacher who we've stayed in contact with reaches out to us and says, "Hey, loving life in San Diego. I wish you guys were here. I would find jobs for you and let you guys start to work out here." And my wife and I were like, "Well, we're looking for a change. Would you mind if we came out?" And we come out there. Again, she hires my wife right off the bat because she's running a lab for a circuit board company at the time. She's running a lab. She hires my wife. She gets me a job. And again, we rekindle our friendship and we hang out for a while. And this is through our early 20s. And then I guess when we were about 25 or so, she moves off. She actually breaks her relationship that she's in, breaks up, and she moves out of state. And we completely lose touch with her. And then just out of the blue, we learn she's up in Sacramento, and my wife and her make contact again. And just out of luck, my daughter is going up to Sacramento for a conference, and she was about an hour and a half outside Sacramento. She drives an hour and a half to meet my daughter, who she has never met before, who she knows nothing about, takes her to dinner, and it was like the craziest thing. So now we've reestablished this friendship, and it's like we were never apart. It took us about an hour to catch up with each other's lives, and now every day my wife and her are texting. She's texting my daughter now, and we're already talking about flying up to Sacramento. She owns a winery up there, so it's like, yeah, we'll be up there. We'll come up. How crazy is that?
It sounds like
That
you
is
guys
crazy.
have some really special chemistry together.
Crazy life, man.
I see what you did there.
Thank you. I don't think Eric even heard me.
He's still processing it.
No, it was funny. She was actually the person. What I was going to say, she's actually the person, John, who taught me racquetball.
Oh, really?
Yeah. she's the first one who she introduced me to racquetball and the rules of racquetball, and yeah. So okay, that's it. We're done. Show's over. That was way too much personal information about me and my family. I apologize. I hope somebody listening to the show appreciated what they heard today. Any questions, hit us up on Twitter, join our Discord. But that's it. Episode 154 is done. I'm Eric Van Johnson.
I'm John Congdon.
I'm Tom Rideout.
Keep it
Keep it ugly.
Playing some
What's that
music.
supposed to be?
Playing some music.
Oh.
All right. So I don't know what our show notes are going to be. I don't know what our show notes are going to be.
Well, you didn't even move over the tickets you did discuss.
Oh, no, I did. I moved over the one we discussed. This one we discussed.
I moved that one.
We got to talk about Dependabot. Damn it. If you're still listening, Dependabot.
I was going to ask why you're linking to...
Huh?
I was going to ask why you were linking to the Laravel database page.
Oh, so I was going to talk about how I have a practice of I have developed this practice now of reading from one database and writing to another database. And I was going to point out to anybody who was interested in it. It used to be you had to do a little work to get that to work in Laravel.
Yeah.
And now Laravel has a wonderful read-write connection configuration that you can just put in there that just takes your model and just writes it to its right database and reads it from the read database. You gotta freaking love that.
Ugh, new features.
Well, that's what I thought. I thought it was a new feature as well, but I clicked back and it looks like it's been there at least since 5.6. I think I went back to. Yep,
5.6 is still pretty new.
5.5, not in the Laravel world. It's not 5.5. It's there. Let's see how far can I go back. 5.2. I'm gonna go back to 5.2. Okay, it's not in 5. Nope, it's in 5.2. It's in 5.2. Thomas.
It's fine.
It's been there for a while.
So you're not talking about different databases. You're just talking about different servers.
Different connections.
Different.
Right.
Yeah.
Reading from a replica.
I told you what my new hobby is. Lockpicking.
Yes.
That is a fun, cheap hobby.
You didn't show John that you've actually leveled up though. He wasn't on the show last week when you were showing me.
This is a fire safe.
Oh wow, you've leveled up again.
Yeah, fire safe is surprisingly easy. This is my Brinks lock. This is my generic lock. Yeah, and I just, whenever I'm waiting for something to run, like a long-running command, I just grab my tools and pick the locks a couple times. And whenever I'm at a store and I see a lock I don't have, I grab one, keep it on my desk.
You can pick them a little faster with those little keys that are attached. I've done that before.
Well, actually, I probably couldn't. This one especially, because this one has an unguarded back on it. So it's just open now. It has a flaw in the design. So I don't even really have to twist the key. It'll just pop open on its own. If you stick it long enough.
If you look at it long enough, it'll pop open.
Almost. It's called an unguarded back, so that the keyway, when you stick the key in, there's no back plate to it, and it goes straight into the shackle plate. So if you just take something long enough and poke the back of it, it pops open.
What do you guys think of the show?
I'll have to hear it again.
Nay.
We didn't have as much coding talk. I've been looking for news all week, and there's just not a lot going on.
Yeah, I agree. We had a pretty
good.
good fun there of coding talk.
I was going to talk about my jQuery hell I was in, but we moved on to pissing people off too quickly.
I'm sorry.
I was going to mention what's new in Symfony 5, which is that it's just deprecations. So according to, I guess, very strict Semver, the breaking revision should just be the deprecations from the previous revision. So like everything in 4 that got deprecated is now removed in 5, and that's what's different. And then from there on, new features will get dropped in 5.1 and 5.2 and stuff. But as soon as Symfony 5 gets released, I am very definitely going to be checking it out and writing a blog application to see what it's like.
Good, man.
All right.
Check it out.
I gotta be up at 5, so I'm hanging up.
What's that? What happens at 5?
I go to the
wakes
gym.
up.
Gotta go work out.
CrossFit, vegan breakfast.
You can go to the gym every day, but I've seen him in the office once in the last 3 weeks. You know, whatever priorities. You know, he just figures where things are important. Hi, lady.
They say hi.
Yeah, it's with that.
All right. I'll catch you
All right.
guys later.
All right, take it easy, guys.
Bye.